Return of the Mount Hua Sect. Chapter 212. Goodbye, friends. It didn't take long for the Tang family situation to settle down. Tanggenak moved as if he was waiting for this moment. He swiftly took down the power and authority of the elders and threw Tangwei into the dungeon. At the same time, the elders were criticized for failing to do their role, and even the great elders had their powers restricted. The great elders tried to protect their authority, but it was the Lord who had the upper hand this time. No matter how supreme the role of the great elder was, without people supporting them, they couldn't oppose the authority of the Lord. In the end, they too had to step down from the power and retreat. The family members, including Tanghak, who sympathized with the efforts of Tangwei, were imprisoned right away. The investigation is moving slowly. The reason? Tanggenak nodded and poured tea for Chongmyung. Wasn't the sin too obvious? Right. If you put your mind to it, you don't have to waste this much time trying to prove their guilt. Besides, what they did is so serious that they will never do it again. Then why are you dragging it out? Because there are too many things to organize. Aha! Chongmyung nodded. While Tangwei was being investigated, there was an atmosphere of fear that clouded the entire family. The elders of the family was being investigated. Who would dare speak out in such a situation? This meant that the Lord would take advantage of the atmosphere to get everything he could from this situation. You're a more terrifying person than I thought. As if you're someone that should say that about me. What have I done? Don't get me started. Tanggenak shook his head. The life Chongmyung had lived was both long and short at the same time, depending on how one thought about it. It was the absurd strength of Chongmyung that piqued Tanggenak's interest. Even so, how could he explain the emotions he felt from this man he couldn't think of as just a young warrior? Maybe accepting Mount Hua as a friend was the best choice of my life. Well, as Chongmyung said, it wasn't the Tang family that chose Mount Hua, but Mount Hua that chose the Tang family. True, but will it be fine? What? Tangpe. Ah, him. Chongmyung smiled bitterly. It is true what he did was wrong, but what is the point of cutting him off from the position of successor? Tangpe is small-minded. You can tell that just by looking at what he did. Lord, I don't know if it might come out as arrogant for me to say this now, but... You're saying that now. Jeez, this guy. Making people feel all awkward like that. Anyway. Sure, speak. Chongmyung spoke there. People learn from their mistakes. No, calling it a mistake is a mistake in itself. Why do you think Tangwei did such a thing? Well, I'm curious about it too. He wasn't that strange when I was the successor. It's because he only lived within the Tang family. Since he only lived in the Tang family, he's never experienced pain or hardship. He doesn't even know how vast the world is. That's why he was still hung up on the small matter of being ousted from the position of successor. By seeing the world, failing, getting frustrated, and making mistakes do people grow. In other words, Chongmyung looked at Tanggenak and said, no one can grow under someone who snatches away everything because of one mistake. Tanggenak, who knew what Chongmyung was getting at, nodded quietly. You are saying that no one is perfect from the start. Everyone's the same. Chongmyung was the same too. Along with being unmatched in martial arts, he had a personality which was tilted towards chaos. If he hadn't been reincarnated, he would have never known how terrible he was in the past. He would have never known how much his Sahyungs had to suffer and endure while they tried to turn this terrible person into a human. In other words, if his Sahyungs had been reluctant to take in Chongmyung because of his character, then this version of Chongmyung would have never existed. It isn't like we humans don't make mistakes at all. We are human because we learn from our mistakes. Right. It's a fundamental truth. It seems that I've forgotten that basic principle. Tanggenak sighed softly. Tangpe was his child. He could have handled the situation with a little more ease. In addition, hadn't Tangpe said that he would accept any punishment that was given to him for his mistake? He even said he would give up his position as the successor and also went ahead and caught the spy who was trying to hurt their guests. When Chungmyeong said this, it felt like a stone had been thrown at his head. But is it fine? Tangpe threw a knife at you. If Tangpe becomes the head of the family, you will have to face him often. Can you handle that discomfort? Why would I be uncomfortable? Huh? If anything, he's the one who should feel uncomfortable. It'd be good for me to have Tangpe as the young lord. After putting the knife in my stomach so shamelessly, would he be able to backstab me again? This side is the one that should be grateful. Tanggenak had initially resolved that Tangpe would never get to be the lord. I understand what you mean, but it is also true that Tangpe made a mistake, so I will make sure to have a fair competition for the position of the successor. That will help in his growth as well. Do as you please. Tanggenak sighed. The next matter. He touched his head. His demeanor was different from his usual dignified form. So-so wants to enter Mount Hua. What is it with her? How would I know? Tanggenak roared. His daughter, whom he had cherished and raised so well all this while, now wanted to go to Mount Hua. Do you want me to say no? Do you have the authority to do that? I don't, but Baekchun Sasuk, well, he will just say that the sect leader should be the one to decide. What kind of person is the sect leader? A woman from the Tang family, someone who is too big to be embraced by Mount Hua, is coming. Still, we will give her a comfortable seat and take good care of her. That is the kind of person he is. Tanggenak sighed. I would never want to send So-so to Mount Hua. Sure. So, take care of her. Huh? What are you saying? Tanggenak sighed. No matter how much power I hold in the family, I cannot change the traditions which have been passed down for hundreds of years in a single day. There will be a huge backlash. In the end, if this continues, as per our tradition, I have no choice but to marry her off in a year or two. I want her to be happy, but if there is no way she can be happy in her own family, then I want to send her to a place where she can be happy. Why does it have to be Mount Hua? I would recommend Wudang or Jongnam. Umei would be fine too. You want my daughter to turn into a monk? Tanggenak's eyes flared up. Seeing that, Chungmyeong gulped. He's really a man who thinks extremely highly of his only daughter. Anyway, please take care of my child. If you take care of her, I can send her off confidently. No, who is accepting her? I don't want to. I cannot be a nanny for someone at this age. My daughter is older though. Age doesn't matter here. Tanggenak looked at Chungmyeong with a disappointed face and said, Didn't you ask me to give you our practitioners? That is a topic we went over before. Are you trying to use that here? So-so is an expert in that area. What? Tanggenak's face changed. So-so has learned a few cultivation techniques to cleanse the body, a few key usage techniques, and a few hidden weapon skills which are not exactly included in the legacy of the family. No wonder. That's why she's so fast. And she has also learned medicine. There is nothing else for her to learn. She has inherited most of the family's medical skills. She can be considered the top disciple of the head of her medicine hall. Her level is so advanced that the medicine head hall wants her to take over his position rather than having her married off. Honestly, it was always my wish to have a same. Tanggenak felt seriously concerned now. Can I really trust this one? The man called Chungmyeong became stranger and stranger as one spent more time with him. Sometimes he seemed to be the most reliable person. and other times his behavior was that he wanted to lead everyone to their deaths. Of course, that itself isn't enough. Of course, a promise is a promise. You can send disciples from Mount Hua to the Tang family, or I can send our medical practitioners over to Mount Hua to properly pass down the techniques. So will be helpful over there. Yes. Chongmyung smiled and nodded. As soon as you people leave, I, along with Soso and my family, will head to Mount Hua, and I will meet the sect leader and explain to him the situation at hand and ask for Soso to be under Mount Hua's care. The Lord will head there personally. If a person wants to be friends, they cannot send their subordinates, right? Chongmyung smiled. Sounds like you're really considering becoming friends. Is it not possible? Why wouldn't it be? Chongmyung said. On the contrary, this was something he sincerely hoped for. The Tang family wasn't inferior to Mount Hua. No, rather, the Tang family was a huge ally for Mount Hua right now. And wasn't there a part of Chongmyung from the past that connected him to the Tang family personally? Our departure has been delayed for a day, so you can join them tomorrow and head to Yunnan. Ah, it has been so long. We should have left sooner. May I ask why you're going to Yunnan? It's a secret. A secret that is important enough to be hidden from your friends. I'll tell you if our sect leader permits it. Tanganak laughed. How can Mount Hua's sect leader permit that now? In the end, I'll need to go to Mount Hua myself and listen to it. Right. The choice will be made by the sect leader. Well, Tanganak nodded his head. This was the end of the discussion between him and Chongmyung. So now, Tanganak rose from his seat. Huh? What is it? He bowed his head at the puzzled Chongmyung. We have received undeserved grace from you. What is it? I told you about that last time as well. That was a greeting from the Tang family last time. And this is a greeting from Tanganak. Thank you. Really, thank you. Chongmyung looked at the smiling Tanganak. On the surface, Chongmyung might have looked like a greedy person, but he had done so much for the Tang family. Actually, if one gets to know him well, the warmth that is in his heart. Just words? There's got to be more, right? Tanganak's face turned red. You're basically robbing us of everything. You need to do that much for a friend. Where in the world would such a friend even exist? Don't get angry and just listen. It isn't really a big deal. If it isn't such a huge deal, then how come I wasn't told about it before? Because it is possible only now. Tanganak frowned. If it wouldn't work then, why would it work now? This would mean that it was a task that was only possible if Tanganak had full control over the family. And now, with the elders devoid of their power, Tanganak would be able to do it himself. If this was the case, then it couldn't be a small thing. What I want is... Chongmyung whispered. Tanganak's face was dyed in shock. What was that? It is exactly as you heard. Where will you use that? It can be used, but... It isn't that much of a problem, right? Tanganak's face contorted. As you know, the poison of the Tang family cannot be simply given to outsiders. I know. This will be the only time. Tanganak frowned, and then he sighed. With the elders suspended from their posts, he could give Chongmyung what he wanted. But, you're really robbing me of the last of my emergency funds I have saved up. You can do that much for a friend who has traveled a long way, right? Tanganak looked at Chongmyung and smiled. Good, but if I do that, I will lose a lot of money. So I have some conditions. You know, for a lord, you seem to like putting so many conditions. What is it? Tanganak hesitated and said, Show it to me one more time. The sword technique that you used on the stage. Show it to me one more time. Chongmyung smiled quietly. It would go on forever. Even if a person disappears, the meaning martial arts held would continue. What the ancestor achieved during his lifetime will be passed on to future generations. And as long as the will behind it continued, the will of that man would never disappear. Right. This is what martial sects are about. Chongmyung smiled. That is quite difficult. Is it difficult? If you feed me a lot of Sichuan food, I will show it to you again. Tanganak smiled brightly. I will feed you as much as you want. So much that your stomach will just literally explode. The two smiled, holding each other's hands.